Namaste, Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the reading of Srimad Bhagavad Gita with me. Those of you who have been regular listeners to this channel, thank you so much. And I hope all of you have subscribed. In case you haven't, please do that immediately. For those of you who are joining in for the first time, I request you to please go back to the beginning, the link for which I am providing in the detailed section to this video, and then continue listening from there. In no time you will be able to catch up if you dedicate a day or so, and then you can subscribe and keep getting intimated about every upload we make. So before we start the reading today, I just wanted to share a few details about myself and what I do. My name is Ashtasakhi Dasi. I'm also known as Archana Krishnamurthy. I am a spiritual disciple of Swami Bhakti Gaurava Narsingha Maharaj, who happens to be a sannyas disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are all, in short, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The philosophy of ISKCON and what we follow is same. For those of you who know about ISKCON, and where our sampradaya is called Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. There are many schools of thought. Bhagavad Gita is Bhagavad Gita, but there are multiple interpretations of the same based on what is the school of thought that one follows. So there have been various acharyas and they have been interpreting the same text based on the philosophy they follow. So many times people misunderstand when we say let's go about reading Bhagavad Gita, but it all depends on what is the basic philosophy that you are able to relate to. And it's not about the family tree that you have or some guru that you have heard of or who seems to be very popular. You need to really see what is a philosophy that really resonates with your heart and you feel that is right. And for doing that, you need to really study something in detail. And the best way I would suggest is get into one particular school of thought. Study that properly. Once you are able to do that, if you still have questions that the answers to that your particular philosophy is unable to provide to you, then look for what other philosophies have to say for that. And in case you feel that you are finding better answers elsewhere, simply go after the truth. Your heart will know what is right for you. You have a Chaitya Guru or the Guru within your heart who will guide you. You can also consider that Chaitya Guru to be Paramatma himself, God himself residing in your heart, who will give you the direction to follow. However, that does not mean that whatever direction we as an individual are being directed to is the best or highest, or we need to degrade others' philosophy. But I believe that in the beginner stage, we just need to understand the best that we can and follow any particular path that we decide to follow with complete dedication and honesty. As we progress, things will happen and we will get led to wherever we are meant to be, right? If we believe in that supreme personality of Godhead, then please leave it. Let's leave it on him to direct us to what is the truth. So with this, I just want to also convey that I have an organization called Conscious Living Center, through which I basically organize different kinds of workshops for different kind of people with different age groups. Like I have programs for children, I have programs for top leaders in a corporate, I have programs for parents, I have programs for teachers. So basically all my programs are to do with helping people live their lives in complete awareness or consciousness, not just living their personal life but also able to live their professional life consciously so that they're able to align everything appropriately as it is meant to be. So if there is anything that we can collaborate for, if for example you are working or you own an educational institution, let's get talking and I will be able to suggest some programs that we can offer for your students, for your faculty members, for the parents of your students. That might be interesting, and not just your students. You don't have to be restricted to offering the program only to them. You can actually make it more of a public program where you can also invite teachers from nearby schools, you can invite parents from the nearby community, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot that we can do together. Let's speak if you find it interesting. If you happen to be somebody from a corporate sector, there is a lot we can do for your employees so that they understand what they're doing, they align themselves to what they're doing, to the organization they are with, and they're able to live a more content, happy life which is more fulfilling, and in turn which will of course also benefit the corporate agenda. If you happen to be a housewife, there is a lot that we can chat about. If you happen to be a parent who is struggling to deal with your children, with your life as a parent, if you're with your life as a woman, with your life as a spouse, even being a man, balancing your life between your work and home and children and everything, there is a lot that the programs that we do can help you. Besides doing workshops, which are basically interactive workshops and not coming with any judgmental values of what is right or wrong, we would help you actually come in and discuss openly and figure out for yourself what do you think is right or wrong, right? And experiment things with complete awareness in your life so that you know and you can chart a path that is right for yourself. So I have been providing my email ID in the details section. You're most welcome to connect with me on that, and then we can always see how we can collaborate. So with this, friends, I would like to continue our reading today of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We have been reading the translation and purport by my Guruji, Swami Bhakti Gaurava Narsingha. And we have completed reading chapter 1, we are reading chapter 2, and today we will continue from verse 26. Atha chainam nitya jatam nityam va manyase mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitam arhasi. Translation: if, however, you think that the soul is perpetually born and always dies, still you have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Purport: there is always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed and they were known as the Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. These philosophers maintained that life symptoms or soul takes place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientist and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adhering to this philosophy as well as to the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. By the way, when we are reading, please remember that Srila Prabhupada is writing this in 1971. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, So many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or whether he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such an incidence. However, since he was not risking rebirth of the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected with sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu or mighty armed because he, at least, did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles. Verse 27 Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apari harye arthe natam shochitam arhasi. Translation: for one who has taken his birth, death is certain. And for one who is dead, birth is certain. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport: one has to take birth according to one's activities of life. And after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, the cycle of birth and death is revolving one after the other without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relatives, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Verse 28 Avyaktadini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata avyakta nidhanani eva tatra ka paridevana. Translation: all created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when they are annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Purport: accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of soul and the other not believing in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of Vedic wisdom. Yet, even if, for argument's sake, we accept the atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. From this subtle state of unmanifestation comes manifestation, just as from ether, air is generated. From air, fire is generated. And from water, earth becomes manifested. From the earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation, either in the stage of manifestation or unmanifestation? Somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost. Both at the beginning and at the end, all elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Antavanta ime dehaha, that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, Nitya Shoktaha Shariranaha, but that soul is eternal, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the changing of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king, but when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body. With this, we will conclude today's reading, friends. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you all again soon. In these difficult times of coronavirus pandemic, I request all of you to stay home, stay safe. Hare Krishna.